When it comes to work environments and leadership cultures, we really only have one of two patterns. We either have a leader-follower or we have a leader-leader culture. Which one do you think you have? Hi, Brian McCourty here from Black Belt Lean Thinking, and I want to talk about creating a leadership culture in your work environment. This is a really important topic, and good leadership doesn't happen by accident. We either design it into the organization or it's absent. And we'll look at two patterns. Again, we have a leader-follower approach, and then we have a leader-leader approach. So let's talk about the leader-follower approach first, and this is the most common. I started to argue at success. The idea of a leader-follower approach is that you have the boss, the manager, the person who's setting the barking orders, and you have the followers, the people that follow the orders. This is how the Egyptians built the pyramids, and that's how we did so much with the Industrial Revolution. Again, we had bosses, we had leaders, and we had followers. There's a lot of problems, though, with this type of an environment. And a lot of experts will tell you that, you know what, back during the Industrial Revolution, maybe we could get by with that because there was so much momentum behind the activities and the type of work that was being done to where we could still be successful even though it's a really poor system. That system of leader-follower goes against human nature. And nobody likes being told what to do. We would rather be told what the problem is and be able to help come up with solutions. For most of us, when you push us, we tend to push back. And I've seen this over and over again in different work environments. In these type of environments, you typically have low morale, low engagement. As a matter of fact, there have been a lot of studies on engagement in today's work environments around the world by the Gallup organization. And we're seeing some of the lowest level of engagement with employees that's ever been recorded. So again, this is a very typical environment, the leader-follower approach, and what it brings about in terms of engagement from employees and morale is pretty much typical in all of them, and again, it's very low. Got some notes here. I wanted to give you one. This is actually a definition out of a Navy manual on leadership, what their definition of leadership is. And what it cites is, leadership can be defined as directing the thoughts, plans, and actions of others so as to obtain and command their obedience, their confidence, and their respect, and their loyal cooperation. It's kind of funny, I read this to my wife, and she looked at me and goes, that's pretty much how we train our dog. And that's exactly right. It's very disrespectful to treat people this way, and it has absolutely nothing to do with leadership. Leadership is a very interesting subject to look at. You can Google leadership and find tons of information on leadership that has nothing to do with leadership whatsoever, including books that have been written. I've gone to classes on leadership that did not teach leadership at all. What they're actually talking about, like this topic here, is management. Remember, there's only one definition of a leader. They have willing followers. In this, there's no following, there's authority, and there's following authority. Again, leadership is measured from the bottom up. In the same way that you would measure management from the top down, and that the manager gives performance appraisals, and they might set up someone's objectives and targets and tell you how well you're doing at these. Leadership can only be measured from the bottom up. Only someone at a lower level can say whether or not they would follow that person willingly, or are they just doing what they're told because they don't want to get in trouble. Again, when we have that type of approach, the leader-follower, to be honest, it's not leader-follower, it's manager-follower, it's authority and follower. There's no leadership. And I've been in many organizations that were this way. I think I mentioned tail end of last year and early this year, I visited an organization a few times. There was a global organization. This was a huge company. And in the setting that I was at, in their location, they were dealing with high turnover. They had a really poor work environment. And the people that I was visiting with, including the HR manager for that area, an HR manager from their corporate office, and different levels of supervisors, they would brag about how great the company was, how fast it was growing, their profit margins. But when I asked them about the issues that they were dealing with in this location, the high turnover, they blamed the employees. No one took any ownership whatsoever. There was zero leadership. Again, everything was on, well, the high turnovers because this is the type of people that we're drawing. We have this problems in this area. Again, there's no ownership, there's no leadership. Leadership is denoted by protection. The best example of leadership would be a mother and a father. You know, we follow leaders not to empower the leader, but to empower ourselves. When we have a leader that we believe in, that's when we give loyal and trust, because we know they're going to protect us. That's when you create true synergy. Synergy is something that you hear about, but I rarely see it. If you look at the brain, we have neurons in our brain, and those neurons connect to each other through synaptic activity, and they form dendrites. Dendrites and synapses are a byproduct of lots of neural activity. They get stronger the more often those neurons connect with each other. People are no different. If you want a group of people working together to build synergy, again, you have one person, you got 3 pounds of meat, you know, that brain working on a problem. If you have 10 people and can harness that 30 pounds of brain power, then you've got true synergy. And the way you do this is by showing respect, by empowerment, you know, by showing that they're valued. Then people will invest, and loyalty and trust will connect each other, and you have true synergy. Okay, again, what I typically see is that leader follower approach, where again it's not really leader at all, it's authority and no authority. So you're either a boss or you're a subordinate. Those are the words you typically hear. In these environments, typically there's no ownership for the employees. They don't feel valued, they don't feel respected, they don't feel empowered, and once again, you have low engagement, low morale, and usually a lot of problems. Okay, now let's look at the other one, the leader-leader approach. In the leader-leader approach, what you're actually doing is you're treating everyone like a leader. You're treating them really like a human. You're respecting them. You're showing they're valued. You don't hear words so much like subordinate, but you hear more along the line of, you know, a teammate, a co-worker. You know, we're going to work together on this. You see more ownership and more empowerment. In a typical organization, again, you have authority at the top, then you have the information at the bottom. Say it doesn't matter if you're talking about a factory, a landscaping company, construction, or a restaurant. You know, the people that are doing the work see the problems first. They see what happens, what needs to be done. So they've got to typically kick that information up to someone with an authority level who can make a decision. Smart organizations, that leader-leader type, are fostering leadership all through the organization. We're treating people like leaders, and rather than pushing information up, we're pushing authority down. A great book on this, again, is by a man named David Marquette, called Turn the Ship Around. He was actually a captain of a nuclear submarine. And the way they prepare a captain for taking over a nuclear submarine is typically, and here's what he did. He got his nuclear submarine that was going to be assigned to him. Then he was able to take a full year and do nothing but study that submarine. So he knew every nut and bolt. They gave him dossiers on all his crew members so he could learn everything about them. I read that statement to you on how the Navy viewed the leadership. And what they saw is their captain, their officers were supposed to be kind of the nucleus. They were the experts. They were the ones that everyone came to. They were that authority level. So you bring them the problem, they would give you the solution. Well, the thing that happened with David Marquette was 2 weeks before he was to take his submarine, they had another submarine called the USS Santa Fe that lost his captain. The captain had quit, and David Marquette knew about the USS Santa Fe, as did most people in the Navy, and that it had the worst performance record of all the submarines. It was the one that everyone joked about and would make jokes like, oh, the poor captain of the USS Santa Fe. Well, now he was the poor captain of the USS Santa Fe. And he found himself in a very awkward position in that he took over a submarine that he knew nothing about. He knew nothing about the crew members, but he didn't know that it had the worst performance record of any of the Navy's nuclear submarines, and it had, for what everyone thought of, the worst crew. So this was a bad situation that all of a sudden David Marquette found himself in. And here's what happened though, when he realized that he could not act the way the Navy wanted him to act as a leader, he started empowering the crewmates, giving them more authority. He told them, rather than saying, Captain, I would like to, he told them, let's just say, I intend to. So if you need to do something, just say, I intend to, keep me informed, but you have control. And within 12 months, this submarine, which was the worst, had become the best in naval history. It was getting the highest scores on everything that was measurable in terms of performance of any submarine in the history of the Navy. In fact, Stephen Covey, who wrote the book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, had asked to come and spend time on the submarine so he could study how they turned that ship around and how they were successfully grooming people for leadership. Under David Marquette as captain, they went from 3 people re-enlisting to all 35 re-enlisting, 35 re-enlisting. So what they did was tremendous. And he implemented certain things along the line of, we're going to work as a team, we're going to push down authority, we're going to quit saying they, there's no they, everything is we. And in every work culture, again, we tend to see that. Remember, the number one thing that is needed for leadership is protection. So that ownership is now there in terms of we're now the same team. We're going to protect each other. We have each other's backs. And that alone is so tremendous. So with a leader, what you're trying to do is you're respecting coworkers, you're treating them all as leaders. In one of the large factories that I was working in as a senior trainer, we had 2 production lines that really were night and day difference, and it was because of the leadership. One had a follower-leader approach, and the other had a leader-leader approach. Again, in the same organization, amazing. Made it really interesting for me to study. Well, say line A had a leader, the engineer, the team leader for the team, was very charismatic, and he treated everybody with respect and as a leader. You didn't have to ask him for permission to do things. He didn't micromanage. He wanted to be kept informed, but he respected his people. The line next to it, we'll call line B, had a manager that was very authoritative. He micromanaged, and he was quick to blame his people when things went wrong, so they did not feel protected from him at all. When he went out of the line, people would avoid him like the plague. They didn't want anything to do with him, and they only talked to him when they absolutely had to. And they knew if they did anything wrong, they were going to get blamed for it. So there was that they and him, that separation. With the leader line, again, it was we. The leader, the team leader, really treated himself as part of the group. They succeeded together, and he took blame when things went wrong. So they're incredibly protected. What I ended up seeing was a lot of people that were on the B line kept trying to move over to the A line because it was so much better work environment. So, leader, follower. Which type of environment do you have? Leader-follower is truly not a leadership program at all, or a culture at all. It is really manager or authoritative and subordinate. Again, as disrespectful as how we treat our pets, it's not really the way you would groom a leader or treat a fellow human being. There's definitely no synergy in that. When we're pushed, we push back. So in your culture, do you have leaders? Do you have any leaders? If so, it's a leader-leader program, because that's what leaders do. They foster leadership. They treat people with respect. If that's leader-follower is what you're after, then like that organization I talked about that was global that had no leadership, that's really where you're at. It's leader, or authoritative as subordinates. Hopefully this gave you something to think about. Brian McWhorter, Live Lean Thinking.